Just as a disclaimer, I'm only going to talk about this concept within the realms of this movie and nothing else, because I know it can get kind of muddled and there's a lot of different layers to the actual historical figure P.T. Barnum than there is in the movie. So I kind of just want to keep it as simple as what the concept was introduced in the movie, so I can talk about it just within that context. The main narrative of this movie is about a man who comes from nothing and he puts everything he has on the line to provide for his wife and family. So he puts together a show and the news columns write terrible things about him and paints him in a very, very negative light. And once he sees his daughter being shunned by her peers, he sets out to outdo himself and bring some reputation back to his family. He associates himself with Europe's greatest opera singer and ignores the circus that he started in the beginning, just to upholster his reputation. When the movie comes to an end, he ends up losing everything, and he has to come back to remind himself why he even started the circus and why he did everything he did in the first place. While I would say most of the audience who watched this movie did not look down on the people who were in the circus, the public at the time viewed them in a completely different manner. This brings me to the notion of the whole idea that all press is good press. We see entrepreneurs, musicians, actors, and stars invoke this all the time. Controversy is far more captivating to people than something that's just good, because competition's always fierce out there, especially if you're just starting out and you don't have a huge following or you're not associated with someone who has a huge following. It's very difficult to get your name out there. Exposure becomes your biggest hurdle you have to jump over, and one of the quickest ways to do that is by stirring the pot and striking up some controversy. Hugh Jackman's character, P.T. Barnum, is at first, he's not ashamed of the reviews he has in the paper. The more his show appears in papers across New York, the more eyes and ears he's reaching. And just statistically speaking, if you have 100 angry people out there, chances are that there might be at least 10 people who aren't and might be intrigued enough to buy your tickets. And that's 10 more tickets sold and money in your pocket. There are people out there today utilizing this concept to the fullest extent possible, and they are not afraid of how the public sees them, how the public demonizes them, doesn't matter. It almost becomes a shield that can't be broken. If the newspapers and media outlets cover your story for free, that's free publicity that you didn't have to spend money on. Trump used it to win his election, the Kardashians used it to become icons for people who want to follow that similar lifestyle, and Jake Paul uses it to expand his social media empire. It's not uncommon, it happens in virtually every space that there is, every platform. Side note, again, I'm not equating the characters in P.T. Barnum's circus from the movie to Jake Paul or Donald Trump or whatever. I'm just using it as a parallel for you to draw. What we deemed bad back then was not the same as what we deem bad right now. But the concept is the same. The movie allows us to see what's, I guess, quote unquote, behind the curtain of people who believe in this law. I would say it's an interesting concept because for the most part, I want to say the majority of us don't fault the actions of the people who abide by this law. They do this because they feel like they have to, and this is their only way of getting their name out. Obviously not the case. There's plenty of ways of doing good work and exposing yourself on a better track. But by doing this, they kind of sped through the usual stops and roadblocks that we usually get to, and they kind of go straight to the top. And I think most people, even if they don't like the actions that the particular person did or is doing, they understand, at least on some level, they're doing this because they have the audacity and determination to make it so. In one crucial scene of the movie, P.T. Barnum sees his daughter being shunned by the other girls her age because of his association with the circus. The newspapers had already demonized his show, and the upper echelon of society had followed the opinions of the newspaper. So that's the moment when P.T. Barnum becomes obsessed with scrubbing the disdain from people and their talk about his show. He begins associating himself with the European opera singer Jenny Lind, played by Rebecca Ferguson, I believe, and decides that he needs to tour the country with her. His wife, Charity, played by Michelle Williams, tries to convince him that there's no need to tour with Jenny, which is when Barnum tells her that he's doing this for his girls and he never wants his daughters to be talked to like the way people used to talk to him. This is the point in which Hugh Jackman's character takes the publicity and press as important to his image. He wants to keep it reputable for his daughters and ultimately himself. This isn't an unusual turn for people in this situation. A lot of times people with tarnished reputations will want to rebuild them. For the most part, no one really wants to be that outcast at a party or someone who everyone likes to laugh at or be the butt of everyone's jokes. And with enough goodwill and hard work, people can shift that image. People can change their public perception like Barnum did in the movie. With Jenny, he became celebrated by the higher class aristocrats and the papers alike. So if a person has enough willpower and endurance to expose themselves negatively at first for widespread attention and then works to flip that image, there's a possibility for them to be remembered differently than when they first came into the spotlight. Mind you, this is not an easy task, as some people out there will hold their first opinion of you to their grave. But it's possible. The idea of all press is good press is an idea that everyone's heard of at one point, especially artists, musicians, creators. Everyone of that realm knows this and has toyed with the idea at some point. The thing that stops someone from tarnishing their image publicly just for the negative controversy is mainly one of two reasons. One is integrity, or two, it has the possibility of alienating crowds that they want to be a part of. And also, rebuilding images is not as easy as it sounds. So people who know that they just don't have the ability to flip that image, then they won't even bother. It's important to remember that there will always be someone who will disagree with you, and there's always going to be a hater out there, or there's someone who will just, for no reason, dislike your work for what it is. But it could be worth pursuing something that's outlandish and unconventional, because chances are, if you're doing it and no one else has done it before, you can become the commander of that space. In the case of P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman, it seemed as if he was hoping for good press in the beginning. But when he started receiving bad publicity, he kind of just ran with it anyway and made a fortune doing so. There's a quote he said to the little person that said, "People are laughing anyway, might as well make some money off of them." And that's a pretty good way of handling a situation like this. The different and extraordinary should have a place in our society, even if it doesn't meet conventional expectations of quote-unquote entertainment. Hope you liked that video, and if you did, please make sure to hit the like button. Thanks!